What's my favorite economic concept ever? I would love to tell you. All right. So it's the one that literally explains global inequality in the simplest way. It's about raw materials and how if the countries that produce them actually united, they could flip the global economy upside down. Go ahead, set me down somewhere. I know you got a full laundry, do dishes. I'll wait. Okay, so the world economy is set up like this. Wealthy countries export finished products, cars, tech, machinery, etc. Meanwhile, developing countries mostly export primary products, which are raw materials usually taken straight from the earth. I'm talking about cacao beans, West Africa, South America, sugarcane, Brazil, India, the Caribbean, rubber, which is the latex sap from trees in Southeast Asia, crude oil, the Middle East, Africa, the Americas, iron ore, Brazil, West Africa, timber comes from forests from the Congo Basin to the Amazon, etc. You get the idea. These raw goods are the foundation of everything we use. Cacao becomes chocolate, rubber becomes tires, iron ore becomes steel, etc. All of the stuff that these wealthy nations make a profit from. Here is the problem though. When your economy depends on exporting raw materials, you are at the mercy of global price swing. Historically, the prices of these raw materials have been kept really low. Why? Global markets, multinational corporations, and wealthy nations benefit from buying cheap and selling expensive. Overproduction, trade rules, and the lingering impact of colonialism all keep developing countries dependent. Some argue that finished goods make raw materials valuable, so the prices should be low. But that doesn't make any sense. If the backbone and the base of your product is a raw material, you can only create said value and have a business if you have the raw material. And if that's the reality, and most of your profit leaves your country in that case, it's not balanced and only benefits the people leeching off of you and your materials, which is what we've been seeing. Dependency theory says this: the setup is not neutral. It's a system designed to benefit core wealthy countries and keep periphery nations, which are the ones mostly exporting these raw materials, it keeps them dependent. So in the 70s, developing countries proposed something radical: the New International Economic Order, or the NIEO. This was their big idea. If the countries exporting primary products actually work together, they could form commodity alliances, basically their own OPECs, and they could control their own resources and trade more with each other. It was a South-South cooperation. Build their own industries instead of just exporting raw stuff. And if they controlled supply altogether, they could raise prices, gain bargaining power, and break out of old colonial patterns where they export cacao for pennies and buy chocolate back for dollars. Do you see the difference? And this is what they were fighting for. Sovereignty over their own national resources. Love that. Fairer terms of trade. Access to technology. New global governance rules. Preferential trade treatment. And it was basically economic decolonization. Love that times 10. Here's why it didn't happen though. So the UN approves it in 1974. But of course, wealthy countries blocked the implementation and the movement would lose momentum as global politics shifted. But here's why it still matters. So today, we have the climate crisis, supply chain chaos, resource shortages. All of it is bringing these ideas back. Countries are again talking about forming new commodity blocks and taking control over their resources. So yeah, my favorite economic concept is the one that asks, what happens if the countries that produce the world's raw materials stop competing and start cooperating with each other? Because if they do, the entire global economy would shake and flip on its head. And just a side note, I once had a man who, by the way, knew nothing about economics. He mansplained to me that this was not a possible thing because these countries don't even have clean drinking water. How could they flip the global economy? And for anyone who seems to think that there's no infrastructure or capability in these nations, all I have to say is propaganda works on you. Yeah. People who don't travel or have an interest in the outside world often have this type of thinking. And yes, he was one of these type of people, but that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Again, it's an economic theory. It's an economic concept. I would love to see something like this come to fruition. Yeah, like, would it be easy? No. But everything we have at one point or another was not considered easy. You know what I'm saying? It's about, all right, if this is what we're working with, how do we make it happen? And instead, I feel like we live in such a world where people are constantly bringing their scarcity into the conversation from everything, for everything. We don't need to be doing that. Just thinking about the possibilities and working on innovation and how could we make this happen invites a lot more curiosity and opportunity than scarcity, limitations, and to be honest with you, you likely will not be the one having to implement any of this. So it's just like so funny to me when people are like, no, that wouldn't work. And I'm like, how? Like, why do you believe that? I'm not asking you to do it. You don't seem like you are someone who could think of a new way of doing things. So why? That way of thinking is just so intriguing to me because my brain does not work like that. So anyway, I went on a bit of a ramble there. Okay, until next time, y'all.